And welcome back to Frank Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. It's interesting. Point of topic I want to bring up tonight. As somebody who left a blue state a couple of decades back, I have, I guess, some experience. Let's just say that from moving from a blue state in California out to a red state in Utah, and I think I have some insights about what that means: the good, the bad, the ugly, I guess you could say. Recently, there's been a discussion in on Catholic social media, particularly this movement around this sort of subsidiarity movement within Catholic circles. That is the idea of local governance, which I'm in favor of for the most part. But I think it's an issue that sometimes within the midst of modern political systems that oftentimes has some contradictory sort of principles of sort, because we become such a top-heavy civilization, and it requires difficult decisions, right? Like this issue with the Roe v. Wade, where everybody will be celebrating, if in fact it is overturned Roe v. Wade, how it will go down to the states. The first of which I think is something to celebrate if the murder of the unborn is overturned at the federal level. But then the fight really doesn't stop there, does it? Because we're still going to have at least 20 states, 22 states. They're going to have it legal because of their deep blue Democratic Party liberal states. And even with that, I'm not sure that even the red states fully outlaws abortion here in the rest of the states. And so it's going to be a battle in that respect. And I still ask the question, what do we do with this issue? Because a lot of Catholics will tell you subsidiarity, right? The libertarians will tell you subsidiarity, nothing we can do about it in regards to governance. And we get these interpretations of history and even papal encyclicals about subsidiarity, which is kind of interesting because I've yet to find the church actually condemn, I guess, centralized integralist governments, if you want to talk about that way. Yeah, the church condemned communism and socialism, but I don't think it's condemned all centralized governments. I think its preference is subsidiarity, as we see in a couple of the encyclicals. Well, the one is I'm thinking is Pope Pius XI. What's it called? I can't pronounce those encyclicals names. Something like Most Gen Memo, I know, something like that, right? In fact, I was reading it the other day, and I think Pope Pius XI makes a strong case of his preference of subsidiarity, that local governments should come in at really the smallest level. But I don't see in that document, I could be wrong, somebody correct me, I might have missed it, where that applies to the moral law. I think that applies more to local governance, right? Your zoning districts and your water rights and things of that nature. I'm not sure that involves again moral laws, right? I'm thinking right off the top of my hat, Garcia Moreno, the president of Ecuador in the 19th century, who as president took complete control of education as a Catholic integrist leader. From my understanding, I'm not sure if he worked with subsidiarities in Ecuador. He just did what he had to do. He understood that education was being corrupted by Freemasons, and he was going to do what he could as a Catholic leader to make sure that educational system wasn't corrupted. I mean, look what we've done here in the States. We've handed it over to secular governance. We have no church in place, and now guess what? Our children are being brainwashed by, again, Masonic principles and ideas, which leads to liberalism, which leads to classical liberalism, which eventually leads to progressivism, right? So, I mean, the big question for me is that if a Catholic integrist leader has the power to stop great evil, even from a centralized location, what is the proper response before the throne of God? Is he going to say, sorry, I had the ability to stop abortion, the murder of the unborn, but my Lord, I didn't have the proper structure of governance to break it down to the local level, right? That's why I say this abortion issue, there's going to be a big old debate about it, whether Catholics should go to the federal courts, because you got this whole debate between subsidiarity and sort of centralized government, right? Some would call it, new world governments and things of that nature. But, as I said before, either we're the United States of America or we're not the United States of America. And do we stand by while, New York and California slaughter the unborn mercilessly, right? And with very little chance of overturning those states in a subsidiarity method in local elections? Do we stand by in good conscience and watch those children get slaughtered? I mean, you could tell me I'm wrong, but I surely don't feel good about it, right? The argument on the other side is going to be that, well, listen, and this is the Glenn Beck side, well, the Glenn Beck argument, if we use federal power to take away the bad things in the name of freedom and liberty, then when the other side of the aisle is in power, they're gonna take away our good freedoms, right? And of course, being a classical liberal camp for 20 years and observing them now for 30 years roughly, it really doesn't matter what we do. The left still takes away our good freedoms and takes away our proper and just virtues as well too, including the word of God. I don't think the right's ever understood what it really takes to govern, because it is a war in many respects, and oftentimes the right plays a gentleman's game. But to make a long story short, one of the arguments has been recently that I've heard is that we have to fight in this area of subsidiarity. If we go to the federal level in order to deal with these massive problems, we contradict subsidiarity. Hence, not only are we not Catholics anymore, but we're perpetuating evil, which is okay. I guess I'm not quite sure about that. I mean, is it more evil than standing around and doing nothing while babies, New York, California, all the liberal states slaughter their children? I guess, but I sure don't feel good about it, right? All because of political principles, modern political principles, right? Post-Enlightenment modernity, right? We've been confined to these restraints on wanting to do what is right. Never mind that in the old world, listen, we had centralized powers in the monarchs. Agree with them or disagree with them, Catholicism worked with centralized powers. The difference being was we had the church in place, right? As sort of a check and balance. Now we got a society where we've ousted the church, and that's changed it now, right? Because there's nothing really in that regards to hold the states accountable now. Liberal states are going to do what they're going to do in the name of, I guess, extremism or liberalism or progressivism and the march by the far left to do what they have to do, which I would argue there's some nefarious elements within those structures. But the question is what do we do now? As many people see the nation heading down the path of perdition, a nation that struggles now to find its moral compass. A lot of people believe that the political system is corrupt. A lot of people believe that the culture is rotten to the core, at least I do, the culture is rotten to the core, and the family's in an utter state of decimation, destruction, destroyed since the sexual revolution. And when we need to solve these problems, now, if we want to truly solve them as a nation, right, not as individual states, right, you would have to use federal powers in that sense if we want to say America does not kill children anymore. I mean, remember, God's judgment doesn't go to just individual states or individuals, it goes to nations as well. Now, I don't know how God would judge that in the end. Will he strike down in New York and California? I don't know. Will he limit the demographics to these man-made borders we created? I don't know. But I sure don't feel good about it as an American, right? Wear my red, white, and blue here. I guess in that sense, that's why I have trouble with this extreme subsidiarity argument where we're not even willing to deal with natural law at the supernatural element. I get there's a danger there when we go to centralized government, but what do you do at this point? Do we sit around and just let the babies get slaughtered? I guess. Like I said, I don't feel good about that. But anyways, so one of the arguments has been as well, you know what, it's over, the country's done. I'm hearing this from, I guess, the Catholic right, if you want to call it that, the trad right. And what we need to do is get out of the blue states and head to the red states and wait for the whole thing to collapse. And, the argument is if we all move to red states, sure, we're going to hang out with some Protestants. But listen, Protestants, I'm cool Protestants, right? They wave Trump flags and they're anti-abortion and they're anti-sodomy. And, the only thing we got to work on is the contraception issue with Protestants, but they're cool people, right? Let's go hang out and coddle with the Protestants and create this, I guess, these integralist states. Protestant integralist states, is that kind of what that would be? I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing there. And that's really the answer now that many people are giving, or at least a certain wing of the trad group. And I get it. I understand that argument, as I left California 20 years ago, and I have my reasons for why I did. As a result of that, my experience has been good, but there's been some issues that I like to warn people about. The good part, red states are much more financially viable for everyday families in this usury system that's just becoming just a trope over, really over the heads of, many good working decent Americans trying to raise a family. The regulations are lower, the taxes are lower, the cost of living in general is lower, though we're having our issues with housing as well too, but that's a national thing more than it is a local thing right now. And I got to tell you, moving from California to Utah has been a lifesaver in many respects, and we've done well, we've prospered, they're well-run states. The budgets are balanced for the most part, and we got our issues here, don't get me wrong, but it has been a sense of peace and prosperity, and you don't have a lot of the extreme social movements. You got some, don't get me wrong, and that's kind of one of the negatives I want to talk to you about. But in general, living in the red state compared to a blue state, it's been a pleasure in many respects, and it was a move that we've done well with, and as a family, and it's a decision that, well, I'm happy we made, but there are consequences and to that. And the first of which is, well, the loss of, guess what, your hometown or the culture you might have been born or raised in, and the loss of friends and family who you're separated from. And I know modern technology makes it a little bit easier, but I'll be the first to tell you, when you leave your cultural surroundings or your familial surroundings back in another state where you might have had, extended family, that's a very painful thing to do. And you may not, at the time, you may take that for granted. You may take family for granted, and maybe it's your way to escape from the little, sort of the little infighting or disagreements or different styles that families may face. But after a while, you realize what family is worth to you. It's special, it's sacred in many respects. And there comes a certain sense of loneliness if you're going to another state all by yourself. Sure, listen, I live with many great people out here in Utah. I've told you before where I disagree theologically with Mormons. Are some of the nicest people you ever meet. They're great friends, they're great neighbors, but they're not family. And in many respects, as a Catholic, there's a lack of Catholic culture that's kind of missing as well too. I don't know how it is for every state. I would imagine down south there's probably bigger pockets of Catholic communities, but there are also big evangelical states as well too. And so that lack of culture, oftentimes, that's going to be a big thing that you're going to miss. And so I just think if you're going to head from a blue state to a red state, I think in general it's a good thing. But don't think it doesn't come without pain. And I think too, I just think it depends where you're at in your state of life. I know for me, as an Italian, extended family matters a lot. I think for a lot of Catholic trads, or maybe just regular classical liberal political conservatives, I'm not sure they have that same attachment to extended families, right? They'll take their nuclear family with them, their wife, their kids, and things like that, and they're off and running. If there's no attachment to extended families, then I think that it's a little less painful. But if you are attached to extended family, that's what becomes very tough oftentimes, is how you miss that, the culture, the foods, and everything that comes with it, because you're going to a totally different culture, different customs, different foods, different beliefs in many ways. And I think also too, you have to consider where you're moving to and what kind of community, what kind of culture that it is, especially when you're raising kids and you're looking down the line. Is there those deep Catholic roots that are there for your future offspring as well too. Now listen, I mean, when we talk about Catholic communities, especially in big cities like New York or Los Angeles or Philadelphia, whatever it may be, listen, those are communities that are struggling. Those Catholic communities have been breaking down for a long time, and I believe they've been purposely targeted to break down by certain elements. So don't get me wrong, it's not all rosy there, but there does remain sort of these overtones of once Catholic culture. They're granted it's fading away, but when you go to a lot of the red states, which are, in my case, it's Mormon, but generally in the South, it's evangelical. You're going to get a loss of a sense of culture that comes with that. And you're going to embrace a new culture. Sure, they're nice people. Sure, they wave American flags. Sure, they're patriotic. But they're oftentimes those cultures are not Catholic. I mean, you got your exceptions, right? If you go down to New Orleans, you got Louisiana down in Louisiana, you got New Orleans down there, which is historically Catholic. If you go to well, I'm trying to think what else is there. I think there's some Catholic communities down along the eastern coast, the southern eastern coast as well too. But just remember, it is a change, and there'll be a lot of difficulties with some of the losses and familiarity. If you're leaving your hometown that you were born and raised in, you lose everything that was once familiar and oftentimes was good to you. I know I had a great upbringing living in LA, but at the same time, that was a very apostatized culture over there that was starting to die off. And so all I want to say is, I guess, is that while fleeing for greener pastures, if you want to call it that, is an option, and I think in some cases it is good, don't kid yourself that it doesn't come without loss. It comes at a great cost in many respects, and you may find yourself being a minority. And I think, too, the issue we have to grasp as Catholics, I think we're less inclined to adapt to pluralistic principles and pluralistic cultures and things like that, while Protestants are willing to mingle with that, because the essence of Protestantism is pluralism, right? Just like the essence of classical liberalism, communism, all these isms, it's the pluralism is in their essence. For us Catholics, is different. A more homogenous culture of Catholic principles matters to us more, and it's why things worked out very well in the old world for us, right? It's why Protestants truly struggle to create culture and community, and their sense of family is even different than ours in regards to how they conduct and run their families and how they grow their families, how their families stay together. One of the things that I've always said that's always strange to me is this American notion, you're out the door, you're 18, I'm going to move to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Chicago, whatever it is, to pursue the economic engine of prosperity, and you leave your family behind to start your own life. And that's kind of odd and strange as Italian, where, again, it's not just immediate family, but it's an extended family, where it means everything to us, where families for a long time stayed together in most regions. Granted, you always have some type of migration, but generally families stay close. This kind of breakup of family because of financial kind of pressures that the USU system puts on, I don't think we understand. I'm not sure that was the norm in the old world. I mean, granted, people fled and migrated out of desperation, particularly after World War I and World War II, out of Europe. That's how we find ourselves, a lot of us here in America today. But the general idea is that families stick together, they stay together. In Italian communities, we see aunts and uncles. In many respects, we hold them in such high regard. They're surrogate parents in many ways, right? That's how they were viewed in the old world. Our cousins are almost like, surrogate siblings, right? Just an extension of our brothers and sisters in many ways. That's why, with Italians or Greeks especially, that's why we see cousins like siblings, like brothers and sisters. There's that close bond, that close connection. I grew up with it in LA when I was younger, but as, again, the economic engine of prosperity has to dominate and move people around in this globalist economy, because we're not in small communities, right? We're not in subsidiary, economies anymore, like a lot of people like to talk about. And I think that's the other essence of this whole subsidiarity argument, is that we do have a global economy now, right? We're all being spread apart in many respects, and the extremism that's coming out of the blue states, especially in regards to finances and culture and social policies, continues to drift people apart. Is the grass greener in red states? Yeah, I would say it is in a financial front for the most part. But don't forget, there's more to life than just making the money. I believe as Americans, that's our greatest sin, if you want to call it. The overemphasis on materialism and finances and making the money in America, climbing up the economic engine of prosperity, which is something that's boasted upon by the right. Because in that process, we sold our souls and we sold our families. I mean, the one thing that Americans will never be known for, in my opinion, is really, raising strong families. That's a European concept, right? It's really not an American concept. America, we just make money. It's what we do. We got freedom, we got comforts, we got pleasures, right? We work hard, right? That's the Calvinist past of ours. And there's some goodness in working hard. I think we work too much, but that's fine. That's a good virtue, I think, to a certain extent. But, guys, I think in many ways, the loss of culture and family, it's left us soulless. I believe that's why we have a lot of the social dysfunctions that we have today in our society. It's why people are lonely. It's why people are broken. It's why people don't know who to turn to. It's why people are using drugs more than ever before, both legal and illegal drugs, right? To cope with everyday life. That's why depression is on the rise. It's why, again, people are looking for an outlet. We've convinced them that making the money in America is the greatest virtue of all time. I was sold that one as a classical liberal camp, and it's a great mistake. On the left, you got the other extremes there, right? That challenge all the social sort of norms of our time, that try and break us down and trying to enamor our sins and exploit our fallen nature. But all I would say is if you're looking to flee a blue state for greener pastures, just realize that it can be tough in a lot of different ways that you may not realize. Even if you're at odds with your family to a certain degree, you really don't know how good you have something sometimes until you lose it. And then you miss it. And then it haunts you. And oftentimes it's hard to get it back once you lose it. That's my warning to you there. That's it, as somebody who's experienced it. So there you have it. Okay, fleeing the blue states for red states. That's my take on, ladies and gentlemen. This is Frank signing off for Frankly Speaking. I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys. Good night.